Hey guys, this is chapter 7 screencast on two-dimensional arrays. Basically, when you're dealing with two-dimensional arrays, you're dealing with some kind of two-dimensional figure. So you're dealing with like a grid like this, or some kind of table with rows and columns. When constructing a two-dimensional array, specify how many rows and columns are needed. Okay, so for a tic-tac-toe board, for example, you need 3 rows and 3 columns. So what we're doing here is declaring a rows variable to 3. And final means it's a constant. It won't change. Number of rows for a tic-tac-toe board does not change. And then columns equal 3, and again it's final or constant because the number of columns isn't changing. And it's a whole number, so it declares an int. Then what we have here is a statement that creates a two-dimensional string array, and the part that does that is this new string rows columns. So basically when you create a new two-dimensional array, you have to specify the number of columns first, and then the number of rows first, and then the number of columns second. Okay, and then to the left here we have our declaration of our reference or object variable. So board is of type string and it's a two-dimensional array, so you have 2 sets of square brackets. So if it was a 1D array, it would just be 1 square bracket, and then you just pass 1 value here for the length. But since it's two-dimensional, you have 2 sets of square brackets, and then you have your object variable or reference variable that points to that two-dimensional array of size 3, 3. Okay, to access the elements of the array, you need an index pair. You need to specify the row number and column number. Think of grid world, okay? And row number and column number starts counting with 0. So this position here is 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2. This is 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2. This is 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2. Okay, so if you wanted to put x in 1, 1, this is how you would specify it. Board 1, 1 equal x. So it will go to position 1, 1, which is right here, and put an x. If you wanted to put an O down here, basically that's 0, 1, 2, row 2, column 1, so it's 2, 1. So you would say board 2, 1 like that equals 0. So that will place the O in that position. So it's common to use 2 nested loops with filling or searching. So since you have a two-dimensional figure, you need nested loops, not just a single loop for just a 1D array. So what you do is you have an outer loop here for I equals 0, I less than rows. Okay, so and then you have your inner loop for j equals 0 to j less than columns. And then you're going to fill the board with empty space. So how this works is the outer loop executes, so I will be 0. Then the inner loop executes, and it executes in its entirety. So j is 0, and then 1, and then 2. So basically you're filling the first row of the board with all spaces. Okay, so basically, so that you have I is 0, j is 0, 1, 2. So that's 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2. Then you go back out to the outer loop, then j is 1. And then your inner loop executes in its entirety, so j is 0, 1, 2, so that would be board sub 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2. And then the last time I will be 2, because that's less than rows, 2 is less than 3. And then the inner loop will execute in its entirety, so it'll be 0, 1, 2. So basically you're in row 2, and then j is changing, 0, 1, 2. So you're going to fill this last row with spaces. 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2. Okay, that's how for loops work. The outer loop executes first, and the inner loop executes in its entirety. Then control goes back to the outer loop, and then it becomes 1, and then this is 0, 1, 2. And then the outer loop becomes 2, and then j is 0, 1, 2, like that. So that's how you fill the rows with blanks. You can also recover the array dimensions from the array variable. This is just another way to do it. Board.length specifies the number of rows. Okay, and board sub 0.length is the number of columns. And basically a two-dimensional array is just a bunch of one-dimensional arrays put together. So board sub 0 is basically the first row. And what's the length of the first row? Well, that's how many cells are in that column. Okay, So rewrite the loop for filling the tic-tac-toe board. So this is just another way to fill the board with blanks. I equals 0, I less than board.length. Okay, and that's just basically how many rows. Okay, the length of the board. So, and then this is for j equals 0, j less than board sub 0 dot length. That just means the first array or the top row, how many cells are in that row or how many columns. Well, it's 3. Okay, so again, this loop will execute. Okay, the outer loop is 0, inner loop is 0, 1, 2. So you fill up your first row. Outer loop is 1, inner loop is 0, 1, 2. And then control goes to the outer loop is 2, and j is 0, 1, 2. So you're going to fill up your board. Okay, here's a tic-tac-toe class. In your tic-tac-toe class, you have 3 instance variables. You're declaring your board variable of string type, and it's a 2-dimensional array, and it's private. Always make your instance variables private. Then you have 2 variables here. They're static, meaning they're not associated with the implicit parameter or object created from this class. It's just a class level variable. Okay. And final means it's constant, and it's a whole number, and then you have rows equal 3, columns equal 3. So declare those out there. Then you have your constructor that's going to construct an empty board, okay, with just spaces. So you just need a blank board to begin with. So we say board equal new string rows columns. So basically that just creates a new 2-dimensional array of strings of length rows, which is 3, and columns, which is 3, and then board reference variable was declared up here, and it's basically just going to reference or point to that 2-dimensional string array of 3, 3. And then you're going to fill it with blanks. So we saw this earlier, the same loop. So I is 0, then j is 0, 1, 2, so that fills your first row with blanks, and then I is 1, then j is 0, 1, 2, so that fills your second row with blanks, and I is 2, j is 0, 1, 2, it fills your third row with blanks, and then when I becomes 3, is 3 less than 3? Nope, so then it stops. Okay, so that fills your 3 rows with blanks. So then there's going to be a set method. Sets a field in the board. The field must be unoccupied. So it has to be a blank in order for it to be set. Okay. So basically this is your header for your method. Public void. Void means nothing's returned. We don't see a return statement. Okay, so it's void. So this is a mutator or a setter method. And then you have your set, which is the name of the method. Then you have 3 parameters being passed. I, which is the row index, j, which is the column index, and player, which is either x or o. Because we're either going to place an x or o in one of the cells in our tic-tac-toe board. So if the board position, whatever I and j they pass for the row and column number, if it's equal to a blank, okay, if it hasn't been filled already with something, then we're going to put in the player, whatever it is, either X or O, we're going to put that X or O into that board position. So that sets a board position or cell to a particular player value, either X or O. Okay, this toString method is basically just going to build a string that will basically represent our board, okay, that we can print. So here's the header, public string. We're going to a string is returned. Name of the method is toString. So we start with just declaring a variable of type, a string variable of named R, and we have to create it and initialize it like this. We have to initialize it to an empty string because the compiler will say it hasn't been initialized if you don't do that. So when you declare a string variable, go ahead and set it to an empty string, just so you won't have any issues with the compiler complaining about that, saying it's not an initial value. So then we're going to have, we have 2 loops. We have our outer loop. Here's our outer loop, and then we have an inner loop. Okay, and a for loop, if you only have one statement in a for loop, you don't need curly braces around it. So here in this inner loop, this is a for loop with just one statement, so we don't need curly braces. Okay, so this outer loop is executed, I is 0, and then we're going to build a string. Basically what we're doing is just creating this first row, okay, what it's going to look like. So we have the R variable, and then we're going to concatenate or add a vertical line to it, and then that becomes our new R. And then for this inner loop, we're going to execute for j is 0. So we're going to take whatever's in that board at that position, 0, 0, we're going to concatenate it to R, make that our new R. And then we're going to do that 3 times to create our first row. Okay, and then we're going to, after we're done looping in this inner loop, then we're going to concatenate whatever we have for R, okay, all those values in the first row, to a vertical line, which is that one, and a new line character, which will start whatever's printed next will start on the next line. Okay, it's like a carriage return. Okay, and that's our new R. So now we go up here, and I is 1. Okay, now we're going to create our second row, what it's going to look like. So we're going to have a vertical line. Okay, concatenate that to R, and then j is 0, 1, 2. Okay, so we're just placing whatever's in that board position into that R string variable each time. So then we'll have, so we're building our R, and then we're going to do another carriage return because we're going to start the third row, and then we go out here, and I is 2. Then we have a vertical line, and then we're going to add whatever's in those board positions, and then we're going to, after we're done looping, we're going to add that last vertical line and carriage return. Okay, now when I is 3 less than 3, no, so we stop looping and we're going to return R. Okay, so here's the runner or tester for that class. So we have our main method, we have a scanner object, we imported java.util.scanner for that because we're reading something in. Then we set the first player is going to be the X player. Okay, so then we create a game reference variable that points to Tic-Tac-Toe object. Okay, and that's basically just going to create an empty 3x3 grid. Okay, for our Tic-Tac-Toe board, then done equal false, so that allows us to get into the loop. Okay, because not done, not false is true. So then we're going to print the board. Okay, so toString just basically prints the board, and it's going to be all blanks. We haven't put anything in there yet. And then we're going to print row 4 and then player X, because X was right here, player X is right there. And -1 to exit, so they're going to enter the row number that gets assigned the row. If it's a negative row number, then we're done. Okay, we're going to stop looping because you can't have a negative row number. Or actually stop looping because -1 to exit. So if you get a negative number, they're done. And then otherwise, we're going to let them input a column value, and then we're basically going to set the row and column and the player, whether it be X or O, into our board. And that's what this does. We're passing a row and a column and the player. Okay, then if the player is equal to X, then we need to now let player O go. So this basically toggles between our X player and our O player. Okay, and we come back up here. Okay, if we're not done, then we'll display the board, ask the other player for their row, and then their column, and then set it. And then if it was an O, okay, then the player X is going to go. Okay, so this is how this loop works. It goes XO, XO like that, so each player can put their X or O in a particular spot in the Tic-Tac-Toe board, and then we print our board after each player goes. Okay, and this is an example of what it would look like. The first time we print the board is blank, and then player X does 1, 2, so that will be in the middle. Okay, so when we print the board after that, it's going to have an X there. And then 0, 0, that's the O player's position. So then the O goes there at 0, 0, and then they're done, -1, so then you'll stop looping. So that's the end. Okay, so that is two-dimensional arrays.